So, Daryl V. Hill, thanks for joining me. The work that you do as part of the 10 Tribes Partnership and also the Water and Tribes Initiative is focused on making sure that tribes are part of developing the next guidelines for the Colorado River. Were tribes not a part of those original negotiations in the past?
Yeah, good morning, Laura. Yeah, no, they weren't. And that's why it becomes even more important, that we start to create the foundation of, why it's important for tribes to be able to participate or to make the choice to be able to participate, be able to build a capacity to be able to do that. And there's a lot of different reasons on why, it's important. The 10 Tribes Partnership of the Colorado River alone has close to 2.9 million acre feet of water rights in the Colorado River Basin. And those 10 tribes are on the main stem or its tributaries. And the reason that's important is because that's about 20 to 25% of the volume of the Colorado River. And starting in 2007, when the operating guidelines were developed for the Colorado River, there wasn't tribal engagement, there wasn't tribal involvement in that process at all. And so, move forward, with the 2009 basin study of the Colorado River Basin Supply Demand Study. It was a partnership. It was created out of a partnership with the 7 basin states and the federal government through Bureau of Reclamation. And again, knowing all those facts in terms of the amount of volumes of tribal water and the fact that, some of it a lot of it had been undeveloped in that particular study, and that started in 2009, tribes were not invited to participate in that particular conversation either. And so, but out of that, it really was an awakening for tribes in the partnership.
There's so many challenges in the Colorado River Basin right now. Climate change alone is a huge problem. I'm wondering what opportunities tribes bring to the conversation.
Well, again, it goes back to that, thousands of years of sustainable living from what I was taught, from my grandparents and Hamas and Zia in particular, is how we fit into our reliance and our gratitude, for life, and how we fit into it, and our reverence for all living creatures. And so I think when we're moving forward with this whole conversation, those thousands of years of sustainable living and what we learn from it really ignites the broader conversation of who we are as human beings. And collectively, how we want to live together, and how we want to be together, and how we see ourselves fitting into the world. And I think those are great conversations to be had right now.
The way that the Colorado River Basin is managed is there's the compact, and then there's essentially these amendments and changes and guidelines. Is the compact itself set in stone?
I don't think so. It's a law. And, when I got involved with this process 10 years ago, it was funny because I was like, so we have all these problems in the basin, and why don't we just change the law of the river? And, I could have been, strung up for probably saying that, and I still say that today.
Well, thank you so much, Daryl V. Hill, for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome.
Representative Lente, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So I spoke with Daryl V. Hill about the Colorado River and the need to include the basin's 29 tribes when developing the guidelines for the river, for the next guidelines for the river. And I'm curious, when it comes to the Rio Grande Compact, how are Pueblo water rights incorporated, and what input did the Pueblos have during the early part of the 20th century when that compact was being negotiated?
Back in the early 20th century, you got to mind yourself is that many of the Pueblos in the Middle Rio Grande Valley, or just in the Rio Grande Valley completely, they didn't have much of a political clout or much of a clout at all in regards to being able to assert any type of rights in regards to a water right. And so many of them, in my mind and from what I've understood, is that many of them did not understand the notion of being able to own or take claim to own something like water. And so for them to say, we're going to claim X amount of acre feet or X amount of water for our purposes now and into the future, I think for them was really foreign, especially considering the language barriers related to my Pueblo, for instance, from Tiwa to English, whether it's spoken or written. And so back then, taking into consideration that much, I mean, we're only talking about a century ago, but at the same time, I think about 10 years ago and how much things have changed. And so when you think about that, I would imagine that their claim in terms of their participation to the compact might have been rather limited.
So you yourself, you're an irrigator, a water rights expert, a legislator, and I'm curious what you think if tribes were brought in early and if they were treated like the sovereign nations that they are, how facing some of these really big challenges that we face in New Mexico, how things could look different in a decade or a century?
Well, I mean, history has proven itself that the Pueblos have been in the middle Rio Grande Valley in New Mexico for centuries, and they have been able to play a part in the resilience of how they have lived their lives as agriculturalists, as folks that have taken care of the land, and the land has taken care of them. And so if they can lend themselves into what, for instance, if they can lend themselves to allowing someone like me, not to say I want to be a part of that right now, but if they allow someone like me or my counterparts in any one of the villages to be a part of that discussion, and that part of that discussion can then be someone like a Pueblo person from a Cochiti Pueblo, Santo Domingo Pueblo, wherever, saying, well, my grandfather or my grandmother or my forefathers talked about this being the way things had been done in the past. And if we can lend ourselves to learn from those past practices, I think that could be a great start. That could be a great collaboration message between the two parties, for instance, or the many parties. But as we move forward, I mean, it seems to me that to be able to be a part of the process, because not only do we have that historical identity and place here in the Middle Rio Grande Valley, but also now with that prior and paramount water rights, with those senior water rights that are associated with the tribes, we cannot have people negotiating and using those senior water rights as bargaining chips that they don't even own, that the tribes have and have to protect.
Well, Representative Valente, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. We appreciate it.